Hi, everyone, and welcome to the lecture on first and third person imperatives, or how to say, let me do something, let us do something, or let her, him, or them do something. Both third and first person imperatives are very simple and straightforward constructions. They don't involve any new endings or any new words. This should be pretty simple and easy for you to do. So let's start with third person imperatives. Third person imperatives are when you say, let her or him or them do something. So let some third person do something. And this is pretty straightforward in Russian. You just use the word pust or puskай, and they are interchangeable. They both mean let. Pustit or puskat means to let. So it's exactly the same as in English. So you use either pust or puskай, whichever you prefer, plus the appropriate third person form of whatever verb you need. So if you wanted to say, like, I can't make supper today, let Zhenya make supper instead of me, you would say, Я не могу приготовить ужин сегодня. Pust or puskай, either is fine. Zhenya приготовит ужин вместо меня. And that's all there is to it. It's just pust or puskай plus a third person form of the verb. If you're saying it about someone who is either on or a na, you would use the third person singular, so the on a na form. If you're saying it about a group of people, you would use the third person plural, so the ani form. So for example, we said pust Zhenya приготовит, that's the on or a na form. If we had Zhenya and Masha, we could say pust Zhenya и Masha приготовят, the ani form. You just use whatever is appropriate for the subject of that verb, either the on ana form or the ani form. First person imperatives are where you say, let's do something, or let us do something, or let's do something. And you already kind of know this construction. You use davai if you're talking to someone with whom you're natli, or in davайте if you are addressing a group or someone with whom you're navli. So you use either davai or davайте, whichever is appropriate. And then it's a little more complicated than third person imperatives because there's two different forms depending on whether you're using a perfective or an imperfective verb. You're normally going to use this with perfective verbs, in which case you just use davai or davайте plus the my form of the verb. So davai приготовим борщ. And this is probably the most common form, and it emphasizes the result. Let's make borscht. And when in doubt, just use the perfective. It's almost always going to be correct. You can also do it with an imperfective, though, especially if you want to emphasize action or repetition. And in that case, you can use davai or davайте plus the infinitive. Davai готовить ужин. And that means something like, let's get cooking. You can also use it with будем. So давай готовить ужин, for example, implies the будем there. And you can also put the будем in. So давай будем готовить ужин каждый день. In that case, it would mean, let's make supper every day. And you're emphasizing repeated action. You don't have to have the будем, but you can if you feel like it makes more sense to you. So either давай готовить ужин or давай будем готовить ужин is correct. If you want to do a negative imperative, let's not do something, you have to use будем plus a negative. So давай or давайте не будем plus the infinitive. As in, давай не будем готовить ужин. Let's not make supper. So that always has to be не будем plus an imperfective infinitive to say let's not do something. If you are using a verb of motion, which is very common to say let's go, you can often leave off the davai or davайте, in which case you can use either the my form, it's just the same as putting in davai, but you don't have to say davai. You can just say пойдем for let's go, or поедем if you're traveling by vehicle. Something about verbs of motion, however, is that this form is often expressed using the past tense. So пошли or поехали means let's go as well, and you'll hear that very often in casual conversation. You use a very similar construction to say, let me or let us do that, as in, let me do that for you. And once again, you're going to use давай or давайте, whichever is appropriate, plus the я or мы, whichever is appropriate, form of the future. And this can be either a perfective future or an imperfective future. So for a perfective future, remember, we just conjugate a perfective verb. For an imperfective future, we use the appropriate form of буду. So я буду, ты будешь, and so on and so forth. In this case, it's going to be either буду or будем, plus the infinitive. And you just use whichever is appropriate for the situation. When in doubt, use the perfective. That's going to be more common, but either can work. So, for example, you could say, давай я помою посуду после ужина. Let me wash the dishes after supper. And there you have a one-time action, and you're emphasizing the completion. You're going to wash all of the dishes after supper today. If you said, давай я буду мыть посуду, same thing. Basically, it's, again, let me wash the dishes, but you're going to be emphasizing repeated action instead of completed action. So, for example, you could be making plans about who's going to do what chores in general, and you could say, давай я буду мыть посуду. How about I wash the dishes? But again, if in doubt, perfective is normally better with these давай forms.